Chapter 8, Safety Management. So unintentional injury is now used instead of accident because most accidents are preventable. So unintentional injuries are the primary cause of death among children under 14 years of age. And you can find more information about this on table 8-1 on page 205. There are also developmental characteristics and ways that we can prevent injury by considering those characteristics. You can find those on page 206 of the chapter. And then take a look at table 8-3, which lists conditions that contribute to unintentional injuries on page 208. So young children are at especially high risk for unintentional injuries due to their limited understanding of cause and effect and their lack of experience, their immature motor skills, and their energy and exuberance. Individuals who work with children have legal obligations or liability and professional responsibilities to keep children safe. And failure to do this is an acceptable mand is considered, this is an unacceptable mand is considered to be negligence. And so in other words, we're required to have training in regards to providing safe and healthy programs for children. And if we're not meeting the conditions we're trained to meet, then we're considered being negligent and liable for that negligence. So effective risk management is based on 4 basic principles. Number 1, advanced planning and thoughtful selection of toys, play equipment, and activities. And so what we want to make sure that we do is plan activities that are developmentally appropriate and address children's interests and abilities. And we need to know this information well. Number 2, we need to establish and consistently enforce rules. Rules should be based on knowledge of children's age, interests, and developmental abilities. And we need to have effective supervisory skills to make sure that the number of children in a group must be taken into consideration as we establish these rules. And rules must be appropriate for a given activity and stated in a positive and specific way so the children know what is appropriate rather than focusing on all of the different variations of inappropriate behavior. So number 3, we want to provide quality supervision. So the majority of unintentional injuries in group settings occur during outdoor play, as we've mentioned before, and the amount of supervision required depends on the types of activities, the children's developmental abilities, and their limitations. So teachers should be trained in first aid and be familiar with the program's emergency policies and procedures. They need to utilize positive strategies for managing children's inappropriate behavior and make sure they pass on information about what is appropriate. And then number 4, they need to provide safety education, and this should be ongoing. We should take advantage of formal and spontaneous learning opportunities with the children, and we should gradually help the children develop self-protection skills. Safety and toys. Selecting safe toys and play equipment. Something to note is that not all manufacturers' age recommendations are appropriate, and so you need to know your child's abilities and limitations as you make choices for toys and play equipment. If you take a look at checklist 8-4 on page 215, you can get more information in regards to that. So we want to avoid toys with small parts because they can cause choking hazards. We want to avoid sharp edges, projectiles that can be dangerous, loud noises, and long strings or cords that are strangulation hazards. We also want to consider the construction of the toys, and are they non-toxic, and do they have safety features? And again, you can look at the teacher checklist 8-3 on page 214. We also need to be aware of current product recalls and recommendations. And so here's 2 websites where we can find out that information. We should regularly look at those websites because we never know if a toy that we have in our classrooms or outdoor environments may have recall or recommendations in regards to those toys. So we need to keep informed on those issues. Also, we need to pay attention to art materials that pose hazards. And so on page 220, you can see a checklist in regards to that. So for example, in the past, we regularly used powdered paints, but today there is a safety hazard or risk with those paints being inhaled. We've discovered that's an issue for children, and so it's not recommended that we do use powdered paints anymore with the children directly. We need to take special precautions to ensure that field trips are safe for children. So field trips need to be thoughtfully planned. We need to have emergency procedures and emergency plans, and we need to have notification procedures in case an emergency were to happen. And you have some specific information about that on page 220 and 221 of your textbook. Although disasters and serious emergencies are rare, schools need to be prepared and ready to respond to natural disasters like floods or earthquakes, technological and accidental hazards, pandemic illnesses, and threats against personal safety, like shootings in the neighborhood or even at your own program. So in order to prepare, we need to develop a response plan. We need to gather emergency supplies, and you can find more information in regards to that on page 226 and 227. You need to practice and revise those plans. We need to develop strategies to help children cope following an event, and there's more information on page 228. And we need to make sure that we inform families about our plans, our supplies, and our practice plans.